I am the Princess Regent. 20 years after my death, I pried open my coffin and climbed out of my mausoleum. I used the imperial concubine selection as a chance to enter the palace. I inadvertently ran afoul of the crown prince and was cursed at by a palace maid who pointed a finger right in my face. The crown prince was about to have me arrested for questioning, but then the Empress grabbed my hand, scolding the crown prince through her tears. "Kneel, this is your aunt." I struck a prince, and his mother, a favored consort, came for me, threatening to shatter every bone in my body. The emperor rushed over and fell to his knees with a thud, his eyes red as he said to me, "Elder sister, I was wrong." Everyone was stunned. It took all my strength to climb out of the sarcophagus, and even more to leave the mausoleum. The moment I saw the light of day again, I truly never expected to be alive. The last thing I remembered was the emperor's terrified, helpless face as the poison took my life. He had kept crying, "Elder sister," his voice choked with anguish. I lowered my gaze, lost in thought. It seemed the emperor wasn't the one who had poisoned me. After entering the city and getting my bearings, I learned that 20 years had passed in a flash. The emperor had become known as a tyrant. I wandered around for just 2 days and encountered several groups plotting rebellion. Worse still, I recognized one of them as a former subordinate of mine. I drew a sharp breath. Had my great Cheng dynasty fallen into such a precarious state? I shook my head. What a prodigal son. I used the concubine selection to enter the palace. After 20 years, few people in the palace remembered me, especially since I had returned in the body of my younger self. But my beauty and bearing made heads turn. The matron in charge said my etiquette was more impeccable than that of veteran palace staff who had served for decades. Hilarious. For the first 20-odd years of my life, I was born in the palace, raised in the palace, and ultimately died in the palace. Could anyone possibly know its rules better than I? An indignant candidate snorted, putting on an act. No matter how much she pretends, can she compare to her? She's the first palace maid of the imperial court. Rumor has it she bears a striking resemblance to the Princess Regent from back then, His Majesty and the Crown Prince. Silence, how dare you gossip about the royal family? The candidate was harshly reprimanded, and the look she gave me became even more resentful. I paid her no mind, pondering her words. The first palace maid of the imperial court, and she looked like me. I'd been buried for 20 years, had the world gone completely mad. I settled into my role as a candidate, in no hurry to seek out the emperor. During that time, I was bullied 3 times, framed once, and verbal abuse was as regular as my daily meals. The tree that stands tallest in the forest will be the first to be broken by the wind. I understood that principle when I was 3. Back when I held great power and ruled in the emperor's stead, I faced endless condemnation from both the court and the common people. The public denounced me, and many officials at court protested to the death. They cursed me as the hen that crows at dawn. This was nothing compared to that. Smack! I slapped her across the face, a faint, sweet smile on my lips. I grabbed the candidate by her collar, pulled her close, and stared into her eyes. A fly buzzing around is one thing, but a fly that buzzes in your face gets swatted dead. The gaze of someone long accustomed to holding the power of life and death was more than a mere candidate could bear. She trembled with fear, unable to utter a single word. I patted her cheek, straightened her collar, and casually pushed her away. "Don't keep staring at me. We are not on the same path. If you insist on throwing yourself under my feet, it would be a shame to be trampled to death for nothing." Only after I had left did the other candidates in the room dare to breathe again, exchanging uncertain, frightened glances. What kind of family could produce someone with such an aura? But they had inquired. I was merely the daughter of a 5th-rank prefect. I walked through the imperial garden, following a familiar path. It hadn't changed much. The same flowers and plants from all those years ago were still growing there. As I passed a rockery, I heard voices. "Your Highness, you can't do this to me. I may be a servant, but I have dignity. You cannot trample on my dignity." I paused. Well now, what a brilliant speech. On the other side of the rockery, the young crown prince stood with a cold expression, a sarcastic smile playing on his lips. So this was my dear nephew. He did look a bit like his father. Before him stood a pretty palace maid, her back ramrod straight, her face full of defiance, her eyes unyielding. Looking at her, you'd think she was being oppressed by some evil force. I wasn't sure, so I watched a little longer. The maid gesticulated wildly as she spoke, but the young crown prince didn't even look at her, his gaze fixed on the shimmering lake nearby. I listened for a few moments and understood. This was the so-called first palace maid, named Kyan Wying. She had brought the crown prince meticulously prepared pastries, only to be ignored. And so she was angry. She felt wronged. She felt the crown prince didn't respect the fruits of her labor. I didn't get it. I truly didn't. Had the standards for palace maids dropped to the center of the earth? How else could someone like this have been kept on as a palace maid? Even when I was reborn as a princess, I wasn't this confident. After Kyan Wying demanded an apology from the crown prince, he seemed to finally lose his patience and waved for his attendant eunuch to drag her away. As Kyan Wying was being pulled away, she struggled and shouted, "Your Highness, you can't do this to me. You committed incest yourself. What right do you have to judge others? Do you think I'll just let this go? I'll go to His Majesty for justice." A flash of annoyance crossed the young crown prince's eyes. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he turned toward the rockery. "Come out." Caught red-handed, I felt no fear as I walked out calmly. The crown prince froze for a second when he saw me. The eunuch beside him pointed at me and scolded, "Insolence, kneel before the crown prince." I brazenly sized up the young man before me, an affectionate look unconsciously appearing in my eyes. "I'm afraid not. I fear you wouldn't be able to bear it. How old are you? How are your studies? Oh, do the princes still study geography and agriculture these days?" I sounded like a kindergarten teacher, cooing at a 3-year-old. The crown prince was so stunned, he momentarily forgot to be angry. Why was this palace maid, who looked about his age, looking at him with such a loving gaze? Not even his own mother, the Empress, had ever looked at him like that. And how did a newly entered palace maid know about the prince's curriculum? The crown prince's expression turned cold, but the more I looked at him, the more delighted I felt, my gaze softening with affection. There's an old saying that one feels a special closeness to their grandchildren's generation. How true that was. My little brother, whom I had raised myself, was adorable as a child, but as he grew up, a rift formed between us, to the point where we were once at each other's throats. "Audacious, how dare you speak to His Highness the Crown Prince like that? Do you have a death wish?" I ignored the eunuch's shrill voice, continuing to study the crown prince with a kind expression. "What's her name? Is your mother Yazi?" "Insolence, how dare you speak the Empress's maiden name?" My gaze was filled with a complex mix of relief and nostalgia. The little girl I had personally chosen all those years ago had finally taken her place as Empress. In the end, my little brother had listened to his elder sister after all. I was arrested by the crown prince. He suspected I had ulterior motives, that I was a spy planted by another prince or consort. He felt that one palace maid like Kyan Wying was more than enough. The Eastern Palace was much colder than I remembered, even somewhat dilapidated. An older female official walked towards us, her face anxious. She glanced at me before speaking to the crown prince. "Your Highness, word has just come that His Majesty intends for the 7th prince to replace you in presiding over the ancestral temple rites." Did something happen? The crown prince's eyes darkened. His attendant eunuch, indignant, recounted what had happened in the imperial garden. I was dumbfounded, finding the whole thing absurd. To punish the heir apparent so casually over a palace maid's complaint. But judging by their reactions, they were angry, not surprised. This meant such things happened often. Absurd. How on earth was Li Shang running this country? "Chief scribe, go and find out where this news came from and whether the emperor has issued a formal decree." I spoke with such natural authority that they all turned to stare at me. "How did you know Matron Mohi is a chief scribe?" the crown prince asked, studying me with a scrutinizing gaze. I was a bit baffled. The promotion of palace maids to chief scribe was a policy I had personally enacted. This matron Mohi was wearing the official uniform I had designed. Anyone who wasn't blind could see it. Mohi's expression was complicated. The system of female chief scribes was abolished over a decade ago. Now, only the Eastern Palace and the Empress's Yikon Palace retain one or two. I fell silent. When the ruler dies, their policies die with them. From what I'd seen outside the palace, nearly all the policies I had established were gone, with only a few schools for women remaining. The traces of my existence had been erased. So did my little brother hate me? Perhaps the great Cheng dynasty had no need for a Princess Regent. The crown prince's power was even more limited than I'd thought. He couldn't even dispatch 2 imperial physicians to Yikon Palace because a noble consort blocked him. Noble consort Li, the mother of the 7th prince. Excellent, abolishing my policies, favoring a concubine over his wife. Li Shang, you've done well for yourself. At that moment, the emperor, who was reviewing memorials in the imperial study, felt a sudden, inexplicable chill. His chief attendant eunuch thoughtfully brought him a cup of hot tea. The emperor picked up the cup and spoke nonchalantly. I hear the empress is ill again. Eunuch answered carefully. Yes, her old ailment, the headaches. The crown prince is a filial son. He summoned the imperial physicians, but he glanced up at the emperor, his tone becoming even more cautious. Noble consort Li was feeling unwell and summoned all the physicians to her residence. The emperor didn't even look up. After a moment, he set down his cup and sneered softly. So what if she resents me? Without me, she wouldn't even be able to hold on to her position as empress. Eunuch didn't dare reply, bowing his head even lower. The crown prince was worried about his mother. So anxious he wanted to find a doctor from outside the palace, but the empress sent word telling him not to worry. That very afternoon, however, news came that noble consort Li had gone to Yikun Palace to bully the empress. The usually composed young crown prince's face changed drastically, and he immediately ran towards Yikun Palace. No one was paying attention to me, so I followed behind him with a grim expression. Yikun Palace was in chaos. As I drew near, I heard a woman's coquettish voice. Sister, since you are ill, you are likely unable to manage the harem. In that case, I shall do it for you. With the new candidates entering the palace, it's time for a new atmosphere. So I had the flowers in the imperial garden dug up to be replaced with more precious and vibrant varieties. A fit of coughing erupted, followed by an angry, breathless rebuke. Those were planted by elder sister's own hands. How dare you? Ha, a person who's been dead for decades, and you still talk about her every day. Noble consort Li sneered. You value a dead person more than his majesty. You've ended up like this and still refuse to repent. Truly foolish. Zai Shuyan, she helped you once. When you were in trouble, you begged at the princess's door, and she solved everything for you without even seeing you. And now you can't even tolerate a single flower she planted. But she's dead, noble consort Li said, word by word. You all killed her, and now you want the world to forget her. How afraid are you? So afraid that the sight of something that isn't even a decent imitation makes you lose your composure. I stopped, listening quietly to everything in the hall. Zai Shuyan, I remembered that name, the legitimate daughter of the Zai clan. At 15, she fell in love with a poor scholar and fought for her family's approval, only for the scholar to have a change of heart. The daughter of the Zai family became a laughingstock, her reputation ruined. Her clan gave her two choices: be sent to a nunnery to live a life of prayer, or be married off hastily in a distant land. Zai Shuyan wanted neither. She pleaded for help at the palace, and I allowed her to enroll in a school for women. As long as she passed her examinations, she could become a female official and build a life for herself without marrying. I never thought she would enter the palace and become a consort. Inside the hall, the empress's voice was filled with anguish. The noble consort was silent for a long moment before repeating slowly and calmly, "But she's dead. You all killed her," the empress roared. The Zai clan, the Kui clan, the Wang clan, all the civil and military officials of the court and the emperor. The empress didn't say the words, but they echoed clearly in everyone's mind. As if she could bear it no longer, the empress broke into an uncontrollable coughing fit. Gasps of alarm filled the hall. Her Majesty is coughing up blood. The crown prince's face paled, and he strode quickly into the hall. He brushed past noble consort Li on her way out. The consort, with a graceful posture, gave the crown prince a perfunctory curtsy, not noticing me. Your Highness should persuade the empress to take better care of her health, and not to always defy His Majesty's wishes. Noble consort Li is in no position to teach me how to conduct my affairs. The crown prince replied coolly, walking past her to the empress's side without a second glance. Is the head of the Zai clan Zai Minged? My words made noble consort Li stop and frown at me. Seeing a mere palace maid dare to speak her father's name, her first instinct was anger. But when her eyes met my calm face, the anger somehow dissipated, and she found herself answering my question. The current head of the Zai clan is my elder brother. Oh, Zai Huisai, that frail boy from back then, to think he can now stand on his own. Who are you? Noble consort Li asked, her voice filled with suspicion and alarm. I smiled. Go back and ask Zai Huisai when he plans to fulfill the promise he made to me. When I helped Zai Shuyan back then, it was mainly out of consideration for Zai Huisai. He was the study companion I had chosen for the emperor. When his sister got into trouble, he was the first to come to me, promising to serve me loyally if I would help. A pity. Inside, the crown prince was comforting the Empress, urging her to see a physician. The Empress was too distraught to calm down, her voice weak. It's an old ailment. The diagnosis is always the same. Why waste the effort? I gazed at the Empress on her sickbed. She was the wife I had chosen for my little brother, the last of a loyal and noble general's family. I had brought her into the palace to raise her, and she and my brother were childhood sweethearts. The bright, pure girl from all those years ago had become this pale, depressed woman. This was my fault. Yizhe. I called her familiar name softly. My voice wasn't loud, and the busy attendants in the hall didn't hear it, but the Empress, who had been coughing, suddenly fell silent. She looked around, as if searching for something. Her gaze suddenly froze, her face taking on a dreamlike expression. Elder sister. I stood with my hands behind my back and gave her a small smile. Yizhe, it's me. Plink. Yizhe reached a hand out to me. 2 tears rolled down her cheeks. The hall was cleared, leaving only me, the Empress, and the crown prince. The Empress clutched my hand, unwilling to let go, afraid this was all a dream. The crown prince sat to the side, his gaze still scrutinizing. He had never met his famous aunt, but he had grown up hearing his mother speak of her, a woman who had dominated the court and held power for over a decade. He admired and respected her deeply. But for someone who had been dead for 20 years to suddenly come back to life, and younger at that, was too bizarre. He couldn't believe it. He thought it was more likely a conspiracy against the Empress. But the Empress was certain she wasn't mistaken. How could I be mistaken? She is my elder sister. She looked at the crown prince. Zhanger, this is your aunt. Kneel and greet your aunt. The crown prince was speechless. I enjoyed his constipated expression for a moment before smiling and patting Yizhe's head. It's all right. The boy needs time to accept it. As long as you still recognize me as your sister, that's all that matters. Yizhe's eyes reddened, and she rested her head on my lap. Elder sister, I've missed you so much. I sighed, my guilt deepening. I know, it's been hard on you, Yizhe. My lap gradually grew damp. Yizhe, the mother of the nation, was now like a child who had suffered endless grievances and had finally found an adult to stand up for her, letting all her sorrows pour out. The crown prince watched in silence. He had never seen his mother like this, but he could see how much she relied on this so-called elder sister. The two of them, with an age gap like that of a mother and daughter, yet it was the elder who nestled in the younger's arms. The scene didn't feel strange. In fact, it felt as if it was meant to be. Watching them, the crown prince slowly began to believe the absurd truth. Yizhe recounted her experiences over the years. I listened quietly, then suddenly asked, "What's this about the crown prince and incest?" The hall fell deathly silent. I had heard rumors outside the palace that the crown prince coveted one of his father's consorts, and in the palace, a mere maid dared to accuse him of incest to his face. Such a crime was unbearable, even for the heir to the throne. And yet, the accusation against the crown prince was known to all. Yizhe explained frantically, "Elder sister, Zhanger didn't do it. He was framed." I patted her hand reassuringly. "I know the boy was framed. Tell me what happened." The crown prince glanced up at me. The matter was simple. Noble consort Li was backed by the powerful Zai clan. The Empress had no family to rely on, was estranged from the emperor, and the crown prince was not favored. A large interest group had gathered behind the 7th prince, wanting to put him on the throne. Naturally, they had to take down the crown prince first. So a pawn was pushed forward, sacrificing her life to frame the crown prince and tarnish his name. My face darkened as I listened, my tone turning cold. Such a simple-minded plot, couldn't Li Shang see through it? An invisible pressure descended. The crown prince was astonished, not just because I had called the emperor by his name, but because he could feel a presence from this palace maid that was no less imposing than his father's. Yizhe, however, found it perfectly normal. The Princess Regent of the past could suppress the entire court with her will alone. In her eyes, even the current emperor couldn't compare. His Majesty, of course he could see through it, Yizhe said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "So, Li Shang wants to replace the crown prince." My voice grew colder, and even Yizhe didn't dare to speak. That day, the Empress, who had been recuperating and uninvolved in palace affairs, suddenly issued a decree. She reprimanded noble consort Li for disrespecting the Empress and causing chaos in the harem, sentencing her to solitary confinement. And I turned to the crown prince. "Have that palace maid, Qian Wying, arrested. For publicly insulting and slandering the heir apparent, what is the proper punishment? The crown prince paused, then looked up at me. After a moment of silence, he nodded slightly. Yes, Aunt. After the Empress's decree was issued, people were surprised that the usually docile Empress had suddenly found her backbone, but most chose to wait and see. The arrest of Cayenne Wang, however, stirred up a hornet's nest. No sooner had she been brought to Yikun Palace than the emperor's chief eunuch, Eunuch De, arrived to demand her release. Everyone else was watching the show. After all, the emperor's favoritism towards Cayenne Wang had been plain for all to see. Whether it was a consort or even a prince, if they crossed Cayenne Wang, she was never the one to be reprimanded or punished. Even the crown prince had suffered at her hands many times. Some said the emperor's affection for Cayenne Wang surpassed even that for noble consort Li in her prime. They wagered that once she received his favor, she would start at the rank of consort. As for why she was still a palace maid, it was because she refused to be one of the emperor's many women. She wanted one couple for a lifetime. Having 3 wives and 4 concubines is an old, rotten, backward idea. I refuse to submit. Do you think I'm trying to steal your man? No, I value freedom and equality more. Cayenne Wang lectured the Empress, her posture unbending. As for you, she pointed at the crown prince. So what if you're the crown prince? Does being the crown prince give you the right to disrespect people, to do whatever you want? Have you not heard? Life is precious, love is of a higher price, but for the sake of freedom, both can be cast aside. She spoke with such conviction that the entire hall fell silent. The Empress and the crown prince both frowned, looking at her with a mixture of surprise and bewilderment, as if she were a madwoman. For such insane ramblings, she should have been executed 800 times over. But the emperor liked it. I rested my forehead in my hand. I was sure of it now. This girl was a transmigrator too. She just didn't seem very bright. I had transmigrated when I was 3 and had also said some unconventional things. After being taught a few lessons, I slowly came to accept my identity as a person of this era. As I grew up, I only shared such thoughts with those closest to me. Seeing Cayenne Wang now, I felt like I was seeing my younger self. I suddenly felt a bit of pity for her. Eunuch De, who had just arrived, happened to hear her speech, and the corner of his mouth twitched discreetly. But as the grand eunuch of the imperial court, his control over his expression was impeccable. He bowed to the Empress without a second glance at Cayenne Wang and said respectfully, "A verbal edict from His Majesty. He asks you to stop this nonsense. Since I could make you the Empress, I can naturally replace you with another." The Empress's face remained impassive. This surprised Eunuch De. Based on past experience, the Empress would have been at least dejected, if not angry. But now, she was as calm as a spectator at a play. "Oh, replace the Empress? Tell the Emperor to come and say that to my face. Let's see him try to replace me." My words immediately earned me a scolding. "Insolence, you are but a lowly palace maid. What right do you have to demand His Majesty's presence?" Only after he finished scolding did Eunuch De realize something was wrong. This young palace maid, why did she look so familiar? The more he looked, the more suspicious he became. She reminded him of someone who had been dead for 20 years. "Little De, I never thought that you, whose hands were nearly frozen off, would end up by the emperor's side." Eunuch De's hand trembled violently, his expression turning to one of utter shock. Your Highness. Go, you will not be taking this palace maid today." Eunuch De practically floated out of the room. The Empress looked worried. "Elder sister, His Majesty is not the same as he once was, for you to appear like this." I gave her a reassuring smile and turned to the crown prince. "Do you dare to usurp the throne?" The crown prince was startled, but he quickly calmed down. "What does Aunt need me to do?" I smiled with satisfaction. "You have more guts than your father. If he can replace an empress, then I naturally can also replace an emperor. After all, it wouldn't be the first time. I was later known as the first person of the dynasty, not just because I ruled as a Princess Regent, but because I could influence the rise and fall of emperors. Li Shang was the one I had installed after deposing the previous emperor. Although I had been dead for 20 years and Li Shang had made a mess of the dynasty, if I wanted to change emperors, I could still manage it with a bit of effort. I had developed education, allowing women to study and take official examinations, and enabled commoners to enter the bureaucracy through the imperial exams, breaking the monopoly of the noble clans. Economically, I had opened up trade routes, even establishing overseas trade. The merchant guilds I founded were still in operation, not to mention building irrigation systems, introducing high-yield crops like sweet potatoes, corn, and soybeans, and lowering taxes, which had led the great Qing dynasty into an era of revival. Many people cursed me, but even more had erected longevity plaques in my honor. It was said that when I died, the entire city mourned, and as the news spread, the people of the realm wept as if they had lost their own parents. It was for this very reason that so many people had wanted me dead. Soon the cry, "His Majesty the Emperor arrives," echoed from outside. The emperor stormed into Yikun Palace with a host of guards, the clatter of their armor and weapons striking fear into the hearts of the palace staff, who dared not even lift their heads. "Empress, it seems you no longer wish to be the empress. Who gave you the nerve to take my people away?" The emperor's furious rebuke came before he even appeared. I frowned at the sound of it. "I did, Li Shang, it seems you no longer wish to be the emperor." The emperor was stunned by the sudden voice, momentarily unsure whether to fly into a rage and have this person who dared to speak his name dragged out and executed, or to first see who was so bold. Wait, why did that voice sound so familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before? The empress and the crown prince stepped aside, revealing me behind them. The emperor's pupils contracted sharply. You. The commander of the imperial guard, seeing someone dare to offend the emperor, drew his sword with a sheath. "Insolence, seize her." I ignored the blade at my throat, staring into the emperor's eyes as I spoke slowly. "Emperor, do you intend to kill me a second time?" The emperor's pupils trembled violently, his expression a mixture of terror and something else. I rose and walked towards him, step by step, word by word. "Little brother, are you going to kill your elder sister again?" The emperor stumbled backward, the color draining from his face, all his previous authority gone. "The elder sister." Hearing the emperor utter the words "elder sister," everyone else froze in shock. The elder sister the emperor spoke of could only be one person, the Princess Regent who had controlled the court and held immense power 20 years ago. What did this young palace maid have to do with her? "Everyone withdraw." The emperor roared, and Yikun Palace was cleared once more. By now, the emperor had regained his composure, once again stern and aloof, as if the man who had lost his composure moments ago was not him. His gaze was like lightning as he stared at me. "Who are you?" As he spoke, his cold eyes swept over the empress and the crown prince, as if suspecting them of some trickery. My expression was calm, completely unaffected by his imperial might. "A new ruler brings his own court. You replace the ministers I promoted and abolish the policies I enacted. There were political considerations behind it, and I don't blame you. But when you replace something, you must have a better alternative. That is a lesson I taught you when you were a child. To be an emperor is to carry the weight of a nation, and clearly, you have failed to carry it." I spoke calmly, but the emperor's expression shifted constantly. As I finished, he blurted out, "No, that's not it, elder sister I." His voice trailed off, his face a mask of complex emotions. The emperor's face darkened completely. He remained silent, then turned and left with a flick of his sleeve. He took the imperial guards with him, but he forgot the purpose of his visit, Cayenne Wying. But I didn't make things difficult for her either. I had Yi release her. As she left, Cayenne Wying, still believing the emperor had saved her, wore a reluctant expression and muttered under her breath, "This wretched feudal society." She looked up at the empress, her face defiant. "Although you are an empress and I am a palace maid, our souls are equal. You can beat me and scold me, but you cannot humiliate me. On this point, the emperor is much better than you. Never mind, you wouldn't understand. A woman like you, trapped in the deep palace with nothing but a man on your mind, how could you possibly understand the wonders of the world outside?" Watching Cayenne Wying storm off after her tirade, the empress showed no anger. "Elder sister once said things similar to what she said," Yi said softly. "Oh, did I?" "But elder sister also said that different soils grow different crops. Forcing a transplant will only cause it to wither and die." "Indeed." I sighed softly. "You can't grow peonies in a lotus pond." Perhaps she was just a rose that bloomed in the wrong garden. The emperor didn't see me again after that day, but I knew he was investigating. It was simple to verify if I had truly risen from the dead. He just had to open my mausoleum and see for himself. During this time, the seventh prince, blaming the crown prince for noble consort Li's punishment, deliberately made trouble. Unable to act against the crown prince directly, he targeted those around him. By the time the crown prince heard the news and rushed over, One of his study companions had been beaten to within an inch of his life. The seventh prince claimed the companion had offended him and had him beaten on the spot. "Stop!" the crown prince yelled, rushing forward to intervene, but the seventh prince deliberately had his men block him. Although Li Zhang was the crown prince, his entourage was no match for the favored seventh princes. Blocked by two burly eunuchs, he couldn't get close, all while they spewed nonsense like, "Your Highness, don't let a mere servant upset you. It's not worth damaging the harmony between brothers. You damn dogs, get out of my way. Seventh brother, tell your men to stop." The seventh prince just raised an eyebrow and smiled, feigning concern. "Elder brother, this companion of yours is ill-mannered. I'm just teaching him a lesson for you." Forced to watch as his childhood friend was beaten to a bloody pulp, too weak to even cry out, the crown prince's eyes turned red with rage and the bitter taste of his own powerlessness. Tusk, how arrogant. I had followed the crown prince. Seeing this, I shook my head and walked towards the seventh prince. "What do you think you're doing? Kneel before the seventh prince." I cracked my knuckles, a careless smile on my lips. When a child acts up, it's usually because they haven't been beaten enough. I kicked over the eunuch blocking my way, and before the seventh prince's shocked and furious eyes, grabbed his ear with one hand and delivered a resounding slap with the other. "That's for your arrogance." Smack. "That's for beating people without reason." Smack, smack. "And that's for disrespecting your elders." Smack, smack, smack. I slapped the seventh prince's face until it swelled up like a pig's head. His attendants tried to rescue him, but the crown prince, now furious, kicked out at anyone who dared to approach me. Those men, following the seventh prince's orders, might have dared to block the crown prince, but they didn't dare to actually harm him. So they could only watch as I slapped their master silly. "You're doomed, you palace wench." The seventh prince, his face a swollen mess, ran off crying to his mother. Noble consort Li was quick. I had just returned to Yikun Palace when she arrived with a large entourage, marching in with great fanfare. By hitting the seventh prince, I had not only hurt her motherly heart but also slapped her, the noble consort, in the face. She came in a fury, demanding the Empress hand me over. The Empress, of course, refused and stood her ground. She is not someone you can afford to offend. Noble consort Li laughed in anger. "Just a palace maid. Do you think you can scare me with such mysterious nonsense?" She dared to touch my son. Today I will shatter every bone in her body. Let's see who dares to stop me. With a single command, she was about to storm Yikun Palace and seize me. "His Majesty, the Emperor arrives." All the noise stopped. A figure in imperial yellow appeared. Noble consort Li's eyes instantly reddened, her gaze moist, tears welling but not falling as she flew towards the Emperor like a swallow returning to its nest. "Your Majesty, you must seek justice for me." Before she could finish, the Emperor completely ignored her, striding past without a glance. When he saw me sitting in the hall, he stopped abruptly, a hint of fear in his eyes. He looked as nervous as he had as a boy, like a child who had done something wrong. "Elder sister." He mumbled my name. I smiled at him, then shook my head and sighed. "You've grown up. It is a great regret that I could not see you marry and have children." The Emperor's eyes reddened, and he fell to his knees with a thud. "Elder sister, I'm sorry." Tears dripped onto the floor, his voice filled with pain and regret. "I didn't want to kill you. I never wanted you to die." The sight of the Emperor kneeling and confessing made noble consort Li's eyes widen in shock. Her stunned gaze shifted to me. You are. This is impossible." She shook her head in disbelief, her mind a tangled mess. Her son's swollen face seemed insignificant now. The return of the Princess Regent, who had been dead for 20 years, would surely unleash a storm of blood. My gaze turned to noble consort Li. "The promise Zai Huxai owes me was not fulfilled 20 years ago. Go back and ask him, does he think the debts of the dead don't need to be paid?" I leaned forward slightly, smiling at her. "Now that I'm alive again, how shall we settle this debt?" Noble consort Li, her face pale, stumbled backward, her lips trembling, unable to speak. After noble consort Li left, the Emperor told me what had happened back then. The previous emperor had died suddenly, and I had supported the young Li Shang to ascend the throne, ruling as the Princess Regent. As Li Shang grew older, calls for him to rule in his own right grew louder. I was not attached to the power I held and was prepared to return it, but first, I needed to prune some disobedient branches. Like the noble clans. But somehow, word got out. The clans colluded with those who opposed a female regent, and Li Shang, educated by great Confucian scholars, eventually grew distant from his own sister. Several factions formed an alliance with a common goal: to request the Princess Regent to return power to the throne. It was an ordinary afternoon. Li Shang handed me a cup of cool tea. After drinking it, I vomited blood on the spot and did not survive the night. I just wanted you to get sick and rest for a while, elder sister. Once the power was transferred, you wouldn't have to work so hard. You could do whatever you wanted. The emperor's voice was low. He didn't dare to look at me directly as he spoke, only occasionally stealing a glance, his eyes filled with a complex mixture of longing and guilt. But I never expected that the tea was laced with a deadly poison. Witnessing my death, the emperor nearly collapsed, frantically searching for the culprit. But in the end, the ones he killed were merely scapegoats. Because the real culprit was named vested interests. It included the noble clans and the scholar officials who held the keys to power. It also included the emperor. My ruling as a woman, my founding of schools for women, opening a path for them to touch power. It threatened the interests of that entire group. And so I had to die. The cake was only so big. The noble clans didn't want the commoners to have a slice. And women, they weren't even allowed a seat at the table. Roses are beautiful, but they cannot grow in this soil. I only understood this after I died, and I wouldn't force the issue now. But do you know that the Great Cheng is on the verge of collapse? The rebel armies are almost at the capital's gates, and you're still playing house with a palace maid. The emperor looked flustered. Elder sister, I'm not. Those so-called rebels are just minor skirmishes, nothing to worry about. I scoffed. Minor skirmishes? Who told you that? The emperor frowned, hesitating. Prime Minister Kui. I laughed. Kui Zhongqian, another great noble clan. Count them. How many ministers in your court are truly loyal to you? This land could not be changed, but the crops that grew on it, I would plant according to my own will. Crops that grow crooked just need to be uprooted and replaced. I did not personally deal with the noble clans. After all, I was a person who had been dead for 20 years. The emperor listened to me not because I was his sister, but because I was helping him consolidate his imperial power. As for the popular uprisings, more than half were under the banner of avenging me. I met with one of the leaders, a former subordinate of mine. When he saw me alive, he naturally knew what to do. A storm of blood swept through the court and the country. Several major noble clans fell, and new powers rose in their place. The policies that had been abolished were reinstated. In the harem, the most affected was noble consort Li. She was stripped of her title and demoted all the way to a low-ranking concubine. The 7th prince, however, was spared. This was the price Zai Huisai paid by surrendering his entire family's fortune and having all Zai clan members of the 5th rank and above dismissed from their posts. Zai Shuyan broke down, crying and threatening a hunger strike to see me. I went to see her, not because I was threatened by her, but for the sake of the little girl I had once helped. What did I do wrong? You helped me back then, so why are you harming me now? Is it because I can't compare to Zhou Yizi? Zai Shuyan, her hair disheveled, her face full of resentment and unwillingness, slumped on the floor like a withered flower, bearing no resemblance to the favored consort she once was. I wasn't angered by her questions. I walked over and patted her head. Zai Shuyan's body stiffened. You did nothing wrong. On the contrary, you did the most you could with what you had. Then why have I ended up like this? The resentment on her face faded, replaced by confusion. I didn't answer, only sighing and saying, you are still alive. The 7th prince is still alive. Another 2 days passed, and the Great Purge gradually came to an end. I could finally catch my breath and chat with the Empress. She told me something. Caiyan Wang was dying. I was slightly taken aback by the news, taking a moment to remember who Caiyan Wang was. The other transmigrator. The one who loved to pursue freedom and equality. I had been so busy with matters of state, with killing people every day, that I had forgotten about the other transmigrator who was just like me. Caiyan Wang's story was simple, almost laughably so. She had offended a concubine and was sentenced to 30 strokes of the cane. After the beating, she was barely breathing. Before, she had the emperor's favor and could run rampant in the harem, saying whatever crazy things she wanted without anyone daring to touch her. She even dared to confront the empress and the crown prince. Now the emperor had forgotten her. Everyone knew she had fallen from grace. And so, she walked her destined path. I went to see her one last time. Ultimately, she died in the imperial palace. Mama, it hurts so much. I want to go home. I had the imperial physician treat her and give her medicine, but it only eased her suffering before her death. Qian Huaying regained consciousness. Her unfocused eyes darted around for a moment before her gaze slowly fell on me. "It's you, you're a palace maid too. Why, are you different from me?" She spoke with great effort. Even in this state, there was no resentment in her eyes, only a childlike confusion. "I am not a palace maid. I am the Princess Regent who died 20 years ago," I said, looking into her eyes without hiding anything. "Ah," Qian Huaying's eyes brightened slightly. "So you were reborn, no wonder." She struggled to keep her eyes open, but her voice grew fainter. "Was I wrong? Or is freedom and equality wrong? But this is progressive thinking. Why don't the people here accept it? You are not wrong, and the people here are not wrong. You just came to the wrong place." "Is that so?" she murmured, her eyes slowly closing, her voice barely audible. "I want to go home. Even though there's war there are classmates who share my ideals, and they wouldn't have someone beaten to death for a single sentence." Qian Huaying died. More than half a month passed, and everything settled down. My identity was no longer a secret. My return brought joy to some, but it also made many more fearful and uneasy. The emperor, however, was immersed in joy. His elder sister was alive again, but no longer the Princess Regent. She was young again. He could dote on her like a daughter to make up for the guilt in his heart. But I knew the palace was not a place I could stay for long. When all was said and done, and the great Cheng was back on the right track, I left a letter and departed quietly. "Little brother, at this moment, I am no longer the Princess Regent, so I call you little brother. After reading this letter, do not look for me. I have set sail to fulfill the dream of my youth. The world is so big, and I want to see it. May the rivers and mountains be safe, and may joy always be with you."